Welcome to Capitol Catch-Up, the podcast where we break down what's happening on Capitol Hill. I'm Victor.
And I'm Leanie. Today we're diving into a packed docket of legislation, a handful of resolutions, a recent committee meeting, and the latest entry in the congressional record. Let's get started.
First up is the No-Cost Breast Examinations and Medicaid Act of 2026, House Bill 8729. Introduced on May 11th, this bill would require Medicaid to cover diagnostic and supplemental breast examinations, including screening mammography, without any cost sharing. In plain terms, a Medicaid enrollee could get a mammogram or follow-up breast scan without paying a copay or deductible.
That's a big deal for low-income women, especially because early detection saves lives and reduces treatment costs. Historically, Medicaid has covered preventative services, but breast cancer screening has sometimes been subject to cost sharing. This bill would close that gap and align Medicaid with the Affordable Care Act's preventative service mandate.
If the bill passes, it would take effect 1 year after enactment, giving states time to adjust their Medicaid fee schedules and ensure providers are reimbursed appropriately.
Moving to energy security, we have the Energy Threat Analysis Center Act of 2026, House Bill 7305. This legislation amends the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to reauthorize the Department of Energy's energy sector operational support for cyber resilience program and to create an Energy Threat Analysis Center.
The program is all about protecting the power grid and other critical energy infrastructure from cyber attacks. It expands the scope of the existing program, exempts shared threat information from public disclosure so companies can share sensitive data without fear of exposure, and gives the Secretary of Energy authority to contract with private firms for cyber resilience services. The reauthorization runs through 2031, providing a decade of stability for the sector.
Cybersecurity in the energy sector has been a growing concern since the 2015 Ukrainian power grid hack. By institutionalizing a dedicated analysis center, Congress hopes to stay ahead of sophisticated threats and keep lights on for everyday Americans.
Next, the Providing Resources and Oversight for Tactical Equipment to Communities and Troops Act, House Bill 8724. This bill tackles the transfer of excess Department of Defense property, think surplus vehicles, communications gear, and other equipment, to law enforcement agencies.
It sets up a new process for soliciting input from state coordinators and federal stakeholders, prioritizes transfers for counter-drug, counterterrorism, and border security missions, and establishes minimum training standards for state coordinators who oversee the equipment. It also mandates biennial reviews and reports to ensure accountability.
The goal is to make sure that surplus military gear is used responsibly, enhancing public safety while preventing misuse. It's a response to past concerns about the lack of oversight when surplus items end up in local police inventories.
On the topic of expanding opportunity, the Restoration of Employment Choice for Adults with Disabilities Act, House Bill 8736, amends the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Currently, adults with disabilities are automatically exempt from subminimum wage rules. This bill would let individuals 18 and older choose to work at a subminimum wage if they consent, but it also requires employers to document efforts to contact state units for counseling and referrals before making that hiring decision.
Proponents argue it gives adults with disabilities more flexibility and a path to employment they might otherwise miss. Critics worry it could perpetuate low wages. The bill tries to balance choice with safeguards by mandating state involvement.
Shifting to transportation, the Negating Neighborhood Noise Act of 2026, House Bill 8717, amends the National Highway System Designation Act of 1995. It authorizes the use of Highway Trust Fund money to build Type 2 noise barriers, structures that can be placed between highways and residential neighborhoods to reduce sound.
The bill also makes those barriers eligible for Surface Transportation Block Grant funds and encourages multi-purpose designs that could host renewable energy installations, electrical infrastructure, or broadband equipment. It's an example of trying to get more mileage out of federal transportation dollars while improving quality of life for people living near busy roadways.
Environmental remediation gets a boost with the Brownfields Revitalization for a Better Tomorrow Act, House Bill 8739. This amendment to the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act of 1980 increases funding for cleaning up and redeveloping brownfield sites, former industrial or commercial lands that may be contaminated.
The bill expands eligibility for grants and loans, especially for small communities that often lack the resources to tackle these projects. It also adds technical assistance provisions, audits, and a clearer authorization of appropriations, aiming to turn vacant, polluted lots into productive, tax-generating properties.
In the realm of campaign finance, the FEC Administrative Improvements Act, House Bill 8738, modernizes reporting requirements. It mandates electronic filing for individuals who make certain electioneering communications and allows political committees to disperse funds using methods other than checks. Think electronic transfers or prepaid cards.
That should speed up reporting, reduce paperwork, and make the Federal Election Commission's data more timely for the public and watchdog groups.
Internationally, the Countering Russia's Forced Recruitment and Kidnapping in Africa Act, House Bill 8718, targets a disturbing trend. Recruiters luring African nationals to fight in Ukraine under false pretenses, sometimes resulting in forced labor or human trafficking. The bill directs the Secretary of State to compile a list of foreign persons and governments involved, and it authorizes the President to impose sanctions, blocking property, prohibiting loans and credits, and excluding those individuals from the United States.
It's a clear signal that the U.S. will use economic tools to protect vulnerable populations abroad and to hold accountable those facilitating illicit recruitment.
Turning to health insurance, the Partners Act of 2026, House Bill 8726, amends the Social Security Act to give states more authority over Medicare Advantage plans. Currently, Medicare Advantage is largely regulated at the federal level, but this bill would let states enforce plan requirements, ensuring that plans meet state-specific standards for quality and consumer protection.
That could lead to a patchwork of regulations, but supporters argue it gives states a lever to address local concerns, such as network adequacy or cost-sharing limits.
On May 12th, the House passed House Resolution 1275, a procedural resolution that set the terms for debating 5 separate bills and a concurrent resolution. The bills included the Cashless Bail Reporting Act, the Keeping Violent Offenders Off Our Streets Act of 2025, the Monitor Accountability Act, and the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2027. The concurrent resolution, House Concurrent Resolution 96, expressed support for law enforcement officers.
House Resolution 1275 also outlined debate limits, waived certain points of order, and established amendment procedures, essentially a roadmap for how the House would handle those measures on the floor.
In a separate procedural move, the House adopted House Resolution 1274, which nullifies Section 11 of a prior House Resolution 1224. The text doesn't provide details on what that section contained, but the vote indicates a desire to remove that provision from the record.
The sense-making legislation, House Bill 8734, expresses Congress's view that medication abortion is a safe medical treatment, approved by the Food and Drug Administration, and that federal approval should preempt any state restrictions, whether in-person dispensing requirements or bans on telehealth.
That reflects an ongoing national debate over reproductive rights, positioning the federal government as the ultimate authority on medication abortion safety.
Funding the military and veterans' services. House Bill 8469 appropriates $21.3 billion for construction projects across the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and defense-wide initiatives, as well as for family housing. The bill includes accountability provisions to ensure taxpayer dollars are used efficiently.
Oversight of the judiciary gets a boost with the Monitor Accountability Act, House Bill 8365. It sets limits on fees, exclusivity, and term length for court-appointed monitors, requires public comment before appointment, and mandates a transfer of the case to a new judge after 6 years. Annual accounting reports are also required, aiming for greater transparency in the use of court-appointed experts.
Finally, the Cashless Bail Reporting Act, House Bill 5625, directs the Attorney General to publish an annual list of states and local jurisdictions that allow cashless bail for certain offenses, such as violent or sexual crimes. The goal is to increase transparency and allow the public to see where cashless bail is being used.
That brings us to the committee side of things. On May 12th, the House Rules Committee met to consider the Cashless Bail Reporting Act, the Keeping Violent Offenders Off Our Streets Act of 2025, the Monitor Accountability Act, and House Concurrent Resolution 96. The committee's role is to set the ground rules for debate, determine amendment procedures, and decide whether to move each measure to the full House.
And the congressional record for May 11, 2026, shows a routine session where Speaker pro tempore Mike Herodopoulos presided. The House approved the previous day's journal, and several executive communications were referred to committees. While the record doesn't detail each bill's content, it confirms the procedural backdrop for today's legislative activity.
So what should listeners keep an eye on? The no-cost breast examinations in Medicaid Act could dramatically improve cancer screening access for millions of Medicaid recipients. The Energy Threat Analysis Center Act will shape how we protect the power grid from cyber threats. And the Tactical Equipment Oversight Act could change how surplus military gear ends up in local police departments.
Also watch the progress of the Partners Act, which could shift the balance of power between federal and state regulators of Medicare Advantage, and the Countering Russia's Forced Recruitment Act, which may lead to new sanctions and diplomatic actions.
Finally, the sense-making bill on medication abortion and the cashless bail transparency measures will be closely watched by advocacy groups on both sides of those issues.
That's a wrap for today's Capital Catch-Up. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next round of congressional developments.
Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.